Hello, everyone. Welcome to our February Abortion Healing Provider webinar. We are so grateful that you are here. Today, we are going to be talking about resolutions, but I want to throw it back to our last meeting in case you may have missed it, where we spoke about the life balance wheel. Lisa Rowe led us in a conversation on a tool that we can use not only for our own value and benefit and learning and insights, but also something that we can share with our colleagues and our clients to help them to assess where they are and where they want to go. So if you have missed a webinar in the past, I want to give you a quick sneak peek on how you can look back and watch old videos. So I'm going to share my screen right now and take you to the supportafterabortion.com website. On the very top of our menu is Healing Providers. That's you. And we want to go to the Provider Training Center. Okay, so when we go to the Provider Training Center, there are all sorts of wonderful resources here. One of them that I love is being able to access Keys to Hope and Healing for both men and women. This is something that I can provide to a client directly, and they can take themselves through that resource at their own leisure. We also have Unraveled Roots, and you can take that course and learn how to facilitate it. But what I'd like to draw your attention to, especially right now, is the monthly provider webinars. When you come here and you click, you'll be able to not only be prompted to register for our next one, but also see an archive of different webinars that we've done in the past. Now, we have, if you've frequented this site before, you'll notice that it's just a little bit new, a little bit differently laid out, but we have a method to our madness, so let me guide you. We will have the last two webinars right up here, right at the top. You can find them immediately, usually within the first week after we've hosted a webinar. My favorite thing is that I like to learn through reading. And so we have a recap that you can click on. When you click on that recap, you're going to be able to see all the salient points of the webinar. If there were any worksheets or resources that were shared, you're going to be able to click those and have them immediately download. And you can watch and replay the video. So those things are right there at your fingertips. And then what we've done is we've tried to create an archive that connects associated products together. So if you're thinking, gosh, I'd really like to learn everything that Support After Abortion has provided for religion and healing, or how to run a support group, or how to provide self-care, you can come here and click directly into that section, that type of heading, and see all the videos that we've done on that topic. And so we hope that by gathering them together, maybe you have a new hire. Maybe you want them to go through a couple of key videos that you felt were helpful. Maybe you're in a one-on-one review with a team member who's struggling in self-care. Here you go. Hop them right into here, and maybe they could watch a video and learn some different tips and tricks for doing that. So please, use this resource in between hearing from us and being together in this meeting. If you have any questions about that process or how to get to that, I'm going to put the direct link in the chat. Ooh, I overstated doing two things at once here, Greg. Everyone in the meeting, here we go. There you go. So great. We have that link in the chat for you, and you can go straight there when you need to. And you'll also find that worksheet from last time on the life balance wheel. So this month, I am joined with Greg Mayo, who is our men's healing strategist, and I'm Kylie Heap. I'm our new executive director here at Support After Abortion. We're going to talk about our top 10 resolutions. Now, Greg, did you know that by the second week of January, most people have given up on their New Year's resolutions? Oh, and you can't unmute yourself, I bet. Oh, dear. All right. Ivy, maybe you could support
and maybe that's a good thing and maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know yet. We'll
It might be
decide. But
divine. Yeah, it might be.
yeah, so the resolution failure date, right?
Right.
That's terrific. I got to be honest. I quit making resolutions because I don't even think I made it to that date when I was doing that, right? So I think most of us kind of struggle in that area.
It is really difficult. And there are some, different tips and tricks out there on how to make your goals more digestible. And so as a team, we were thinking about our resolutions, and as a organization, we were thinking about the things that we wanted to do for 2024. And we thought about popping this into February because we wanted to go right past that hump of when you've just like gotten back into work. You're doing all the things. You're trying to get your kids back into their school routine. You're trying to get your team back into being in a new year. You're trying to write 2024 on the checks. And so there's a couple of things that we wanted to do. One of them is to just refresh ourselves on some of the commitments that we'd like to make when it comes to abortion healing. And Greg, I don't know about you, but this has been a really tough year already. We at Support After Abortion are seeing more and more people who are very seriously impacted and having suicidal thoughts with regard to their abortion. The situations that we're encountering are requiring so much more of us, so much more of the people that are on the front lines in our organization. And it can be very difficult to be our best selves to serve people who need us.
And I think that's a common thing in what we all do. When you're trying to help other people, you're trying to be intentional and be intentional with your plans and your organization and your team. And then there's all these things that require immediate attention, whether it's somebody that needs healing or that needs to connect. And so you're trying to juggle all that. And I think you're right, Kylie. What you alluded to, a lot of times what gets lost is our own self-care, right? Which is one of the things we're going to talk about in our top 10 resolutions for this year. Um, you can't, we've heard it 1,000 times. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Yeah. And they tell you when you're on a plane, you need to put your oxygen on before you put the oxygen on of your neighbor. And that's so hard to do, right?
Right. Because our propensity is to want to help the person next to it, especially if it's a loved one or a small child or somebody that's elderly, you want to help them first. But I think this rolls right into what we're going to cover first in our top 10 list, and in no particular order, by the way, just 10 items. I should say it that way, I guess, not to harken back to the old David Letterman show days. But um, number one, be my healthiest self. Now, with Kylie's explanation about the oxygen mask, right? I can't help you if I can't breathe. And it's the same kind of thing. So we talk about um, within our organization quite a bit about working on your own recovery, whatever that looks like. Everybody's needs are different and everybody's past a little bit different, but I am a firm believer at this point. I've literally spent well over half of my life in some form of recovery. Um, and I thought at one point, gosh, maybe I'll be done someday, right? And it turns out, no, there's always more to learn. There's always ways I can improve, I can grow. Um, so that's part of the aspect of being your healthiest self. And the other part is realizing when you have a need that you need to address. Am I getting super anxious, right? Do I need to, excuse me, do I need to step off for a few minutes? Do I need to go walk in the park and take a breath and kind of clear my head? Um, do I have a sick pet, a sick loved one, somebody I need to go attend to right now? Or I can't stop thinking about it. There's all these different things that happen in our lives. And if we're not keenly aware of where we're at any given moment and willing to take those moments, whatever they may be, to care for ourselves, we are not going to be any good for the people we're caring for, right?
Yeah, I think a lot when we are talking about our first resolution of being my healthiest self, I'm thinking a lot about the retreat that our team just experienced, Greg, where we talked about self-care as not being selfish. And that's something that is very hard for people who give so much of themselves to remember caring for themselves and remembering that loving yourself is willing your own good, right? Willing the good of others, but willing the good of yourself first. And there's a fantastic video, if you'd like to research it, with Father Mike Schmitz, who talks about the importance of self-care. And we just had such a wonderful retreat on that as we were embarking on Lent together.
And I got to share something from that since you brought up Father Schmidt, um, that I have literally thought about every day, multiple times a day since we did this retreat. And that is where he talked about how a lot of us believe that when we pour out love and caring into other people, it's coming from God, and we're a tube, a pipe, and it just flows through us out the other end. That's honestly what I thought, and I guess assumed on many levels, was just how it worked, right? That's how it works. God gives you love, you give some. But then he talked about, no, you pour into others as God pours into your cup. And when your cup starts flowing over, the abundance of that you've received is what you're able to give to others. It sounds like a little thing, and maybe some of you are hearing me talk right now and thinking, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I would really encourage you to take 5 or 10 minutes and really sort through what that might mean to you, because that was one of the most profound things I've heard in a long time about the nature of caring for yourself. So it's a powerful video. I would encourage anybody to take the whatever it was, 18, 20 minutes or whatever, and watch it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
just shared it in the chat so that everyone can have a chance to hear it. It was a great visual for our team, and it deeply impacted me too, Greg. I'm glad that it impacted you, that we're not just conduits, running water through us of God's love, but really overflowing God's love. And what a beautiful thing that means for us and for our dignity, right?
absolutely. And I see a perfect moment here to
Uh-oh.
to well, I back up before I segue. I want to share this. I had to go out of town. Kylie, you know this, and I'm not going to tell the whole thing, but this little part's very important. I had to go out of town to officiate a wedding. Y'all, I've never officiated a wedding before, and it was some dear friend's daughter, so I was very nervous, and so very stressed out, and I had the opportunity to take about 30 minutes for myself on a little small sailboat, and I did that not because I think I'm Jack Sparrow or anything, but because I was very conscious of the fact that I needed something that was going to soothe me, calm me, give me a moment to just breathe and reflect. Um, that could be different for any of us, but I can tell you, just taking 30 minutes to really focus on myself allowed me to be absorbed in this calm that then allowed me to perform my duties, pouring into this couple and their families in a much more deep and impactful way. So that's my thing. But I also want to say this: when we talk about pouring into others, it is a perfect segue into our next point, which is setting healthy boundaries. How many of us struggle with having healthy boundaries, whether it's with our teams, our clients, our families, our friends, whatever? I have most of my life. Um, I used to introduce myself when I was a Celebrate Recovery leader as, "Hi, my name's Greg. I struggle with codependency." Um, and I always have. And the thing about healthy boundaries is the absence of them can cause a lot of things. Number one, burnout.
Mm.
That's a huge thing. And it's a huge thing in our industry. Let's be honest, right? The other thing, not only can it burn you out, but it can also set your own personal recovery back. Because if you don't have a healthy boundary, if you let people constantly encroach on your time, your space, whatever, then you're not doing step one. You're not being your healthiest self. You're not taking care of yourself. So you end up pouring from an empty cup. And there's nothing in the cup. There's nothing to give, which that can lead to. And unfortunately, I know this from experience from about 15 years ago. That can lead to a level of bitterness. Um, and bitterness is really a dangerous thing in any kind of helping or ministry type field. We all know, right, that 10% of the people in a ministry organization or a church do 90% of the volunteering and work, right? And so when they find a willing person that has a few different skill sets, the propensity is to just keep piling stuff on them or asking. And if you don't know how to say no, if you don't know how to set that boundary and say, you know what, I got all on my plate I can do effectively, then what you end up doing is instead of having 5 projects you're excelling at, you have 10 that you're mediocre at all the way across the board. And
That's
that
really important to talk about. Yeah,
you have to understand that that trickle down negatively impacts the people you're serving too.
absolutely.
Um,
We had a
kind
great conversation about this last year when we did a toe dip into codependency, right, Greg? And and what was so interesting was that and in another experience that we had together, you did a video, and a lot of people in that experience of watching you exhibit bad behaviors kind of fell into some bad patterns themselves that gave them an aha moment to realize that when we have an environment that is not fostering our best selves, we can fall into bad patterns, unhealthy patterns that negatively impact other people around us.
which takes us right back to that awareness thing, right?
Right.
That working on ourselves. And I think y'all, as we go through the rest of this list, you'll find that um, these aren't independent items. They all kind of interlink and form the best possible experience for us and for the people we serve. So if we've worked on ourselves and we're working on ourselves and we're trying to present our healthiest self and we have healthy boundaries. Now, the way I look at this, Kylie, is that now in that space, I am able to be my most impactful.
Mhm.
Now that leads us to our next thing. As I'm my most impactful and I've got healthy boundaries and I'm feeling pretty healthy, then I can do number 3, which is foster a safe and supportive environment. Now, who's that environment for? Well, it's for everybody. It's for my team. It's for my volunteers. It's for the people I serve. Safe and supportive means that I'm not projecting my issues on the people around me. I'm not um, exhibiting dysfunctional behavior, if I can say it that way, on the people around me. And I've set up a place where the people on my team, the people I'm serving, whatever, they have the best possible opportunity for the best possible outcome. That's a safe environment where they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable sharing their story, sharing their pain, whatever it is, and supportive. And I don't think safe and supportive can be separated. I think you have to have them both. And supportive is, in my mind, it's supporting the people with what they need, not what I think they need. Those two things may align sometimes, but they don't necessarily align. What I think somebody needs, and that's why when I facilitate groups and I talk about what I've done recovery wise, especially abortion healing recovery wise, I talk about this is what worked for me. So I'm not telling any of my group members or participants what they need to do. Number one, it's not my job. We'll get into that down the list. What I'm doing is providing them the freedom, which goes along with safety and being supportive, the freedom to explore their own avenues. And whatever they think might work, I will support them as they walk down that path, be a sounding board in whatever way I can. That when I see it creating or fostering a safe and supportive environment, that's what I kind of picture in my head. Kylie, what do you get out of that?
For me, it's that we all have a responsibility with this. It's not a top down or a bottom up. It's an everyone in your organization has the opportunity to foster a safe and supportive environment rooted in being their best self and setting healthy boundaries, right? And so that for some organizations starts at the parking lot. For others, it may be a virtual experience in how you lead a virtual healing group. But there are so many different ways that we need to exhibit this. And one of my favorite tools lately has been gathering different minded people together to get their feedback, almost like an advisory board on the experience they have with my organization. Maybe this means that you have some different minded people come and experience walking into the front door of your organization and let them speak freely about what feels safe to them. How did they feel welcomed into your organization. Maybe it was the first person they spoke to on the phone. Maybe it was the way that they received a text back when they called you when the office was closed. Maybe it's your social media experience. There's so many different ways that we can talk about this. And as we explore being meeting people where they're at, and getting out of our own way, like you mentioned, Greg, of our own wishes and dreams for them, that invites us into this new dialogue.
Which you keep teeing up these perfect segues, Kylie. I absolutely love it. Which leads us into, and I don't, like I said earlier, these aren't ranked, but this is one of the most important things. Number 4, begin with listening. I'm not going to recap the other 3, but, and I don't want to share a lot of endless anecdotes about it, but begin with listening. In order to listen, you have to be curious. You have to have a curious approach to a person. And let's talk about clients or people that come into centers specifically for a moment. In order to understand how to best serve a man or a woman that comes into your facility, you have to start by listening. So that means when they come in, you don't tell them what they need to know or what they need to do, or make assumptions about the way they're dressed or the way they do their hair, or whatever the case may be. It means having a thoughtful conversation. And I've talked about this, Kylie, and I've talked about it in webinars. It harkens back to when I was in the business world. 4 questions, 4 deep. And then people ask me, well, what are those 4 questions? I'm like, well, it depends on the person. I don't know. It's the concept, not the questions. And the idea is very simple. You ask them a question, whatever their answer is, because you're listening, you're not thinking about what you're going to say in response or what you need to tell them. Because you're truly listening, the answer to that question will lead you to whatever the next question needs to be. And what we found, and I work with guys one-on-one quite a bit too. And what we found is that within 8 or 10 minutes, you can really get to kind of the heart of the matter because you're listening and asking thoughtful questions and letting their answers lead the conversation. You could say it another way. You could say listening with intent. And your intent is to understand this man or woman who needs to be heard, who needs help, who needs healing. Somebody just put in the chat, authentic listening. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'd call it. And if you do that, then you'll find out, like with guys, and we talk about men. I do anyway a lot. That's kind of my job. But with guys, what you'll find is that most of the time they first present anger, right? And then behind that anger is fear. And behind that fear is, as my kids would say, the real, whatever's actually going on. Being intentional about asking questions and being intentional about listening, truly listening, will help you get through the anger, get through the fear, and get to what's really impacting that man, what's really front of his mind right now. I don't think we can help anybody if we don't truly listen to them.
I had a really cool experience yesterday afternoon, Greg. Our abortion healing line, we go through a training every month together. And one of the experiences in this training is to re-listen to our clients. And what we do as a team is we sit down with the, it could have been a written chat or it could have been our notes from the experience. And we rehash that experience and listen again. Because sometimes when we're in the moment, that person may be bringing things up into our spirit that perhaps are creating a bias in the way that we serve, right? Sometimes a client hits a nerve where they have made us think about something or someone else that we've served. And so as a team, we have this benefit to listen again in a different moment, not in the pressure of the situation, and hear the voices of our team about the way in which those responses may or may not have been received and the way in which we could do better. And that continuous improvement through re-listening yielded just a beautiful amount of fruit. We remembered to get out of our own way. We also remembered to not bring our own story into serving others. That was a really big tell that happened in our training last night. And there were some other really key takeaways about the way in which people use words that for you and me, Greg, may mean the same thing to both of us, but for someone else, they received it totally differently. And it's important for us, like you were saying, with your 4x4 method, to ask people what they mean by a word. And one of the things that we've been practicing a lot lately is when somebody says, I just can't live with this decision. I can't live with the way that I feel right now. Instead of jumping right to, okay, this person is experiencing suicidal thoughts, we ask them, what does that mean for you? What does that look like when you express that?
Yeah, and that answer to that question will give you a deeper understanding of what's really going on behind it, right? Um, where do you see yourself tomorrow? What does 6 months look like for you? Um, and I can tell you, when I was younger, in my early 20s, and I saw a therapist, and um, we had a conversation, and the short version of it is, I remember her saying, "Do you want to kill yourself?" Which, looking back now, I think, well, that was a weird way to to approach that, right? And I responded and said, "No, but if I don't wake up tomorrow, that's okay."
Mm.
Now, she didn't ask any deeper questions. She started immediately talking to me about suicide and this and that and the other. Well, I just told her I wasn't. But what that should have led her to was an understanding that I was deeply troubled by something. We hadn't talked about abortion at that point, or the abortion that I'd experienced. And so that's the kind of thing, when you're talking, Kylie, that it makes me think of, right? You go the wrong direction if you don't ask good questions.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. We also have to listen with our new perspectives. I know for my experience within serving those who've experienced abortion that uh, things have changed a lot in the past 6 months. And again, within the past 1 year. And we are taking intentional time on our team to revisit what we considered best practices. And sometimes I joke with one of our teammates, we look at it, we go, oh, that was awful. What did we thought that was, amazing at the time. And now we look at it with this new lens and this refreshed experience. And we're like, oh, no, that's trash. We need to start over. So, Greg, I'd love to prompt you to answer this question. We have Barbara Leisure in the chat, and she said, "Can you give a few more examples of asking deeper questions? You want to role
yeah,
play
so great question, ironically. But yeah,
why you
so
ask?"
let me give you an example. Let's say a guy comes in to talk to me, or I get a guy from our line or whatever, and he says, and some of this will be, all right, what I'm going to share is an amalgamation of a few conversations I've had. Okay, man, I'm just so angry. I'm spitting nails. I don't know what to do. Oh, well, I understand what that's like. I've been angry too. What do you think you're angry about right now exactly? Well, I don't know, this and that, and what she did this, and that person did that, and that person did that. Did did you have a feeling about that? Like, are you in touch with any emotion that came with that, or are you just feeling the anger right now? Well, no, well, yeah. The thing is, man, I couldn't do anything about it. Okay, now what? And this is me jumping out of this for a moment. Now what we've keyed on is what he's really dealing with: helplessness, right? Okay, I hear that in his voice. Man, I just couldn't do anything about it, and there's nothing I can do now, and it's over, and it's in the past, and I can't change it, and I can't fix it. It is that something that you think about a lot? Is that on your mind a lot? Well, no, I mean, it's just life, but I mean, you got to wonder, like, I'll never know. And I'm trying to stay off of specifics to respect it. But let's just say, one guy said to me, I'll never know what it's like to throw a ball with my son.
Mm.
How do you, Do you have a feeling about that? Like, do you feel loss about that, or help me understand what's going on right now? Well, man, it's just sad. It's just sad because I'll never know, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so, okay, he's sad, probably struggling with some depression, and we know he feels helpless. So, as we worked through a conversation, this particular guy was a Christian, and we finally got to his main fear point: God will never forgive me. Okay, so whether you're religious or not, that statement should tell you that there's a deep level of shame there. So he's got fear, helplessness, shame, anger, regret, right? And what I did was a really fast version of what was probably a 7 or 8 minute conversation, and we got all that information out. I hope that helps. I have tried to catch myself as I'm talking so I don't, violate anybody's confidentiality, but these are very real things. Now, this particular cat ended up entering into a Keystone and Healing group with me, and some other guys, and he got to a pretty good place after 6 weeks, but he still had a lot of work to do. And we'll get to that concept here in a minute. But
Oh, you just
um,
got a mega thanks.
oh, my pleasure.
That is really awesome. Thank you for the feedback, Barbara. Let's hit number 5.
Yeah. So, and this kind of plays into this, doesn't it? Meet clients where they are. Now, we all hear that phrase and we think, oh, yeah, okay, I understand what that means. But it's important to really understand what that means. And I'll give you an example. Um, I took a one-on-one guy that called, and the first session, he started off by telling me, I'm not one of them Jesus people, are you? And I said, I am, but the fact that you're not is totally fine. And he said, good. And for the whole hour, guys, I think every other word was a swear word of some sort. I didn't stop him, I didn't correct him, I didn't say I don't appreciate your language. It was one-on-one. It was a phone call, right? um I knew he was expressing his anger in whatever way he could. He had to be, and I knew I would lose him permanently and not be able to help him at all if I tried to mold him into what I thought he should be talking. Does that make sense?
It does.
So, so I let him talk. I led by my example, and by the fourth or fifth session, he didn't say a cuss word the whole time. Not because I told him he didn't need to, because I let him be where he needed to be in that moment, and that was the best way he could express what he was feeling. I used to work construction, so I understand that. but when I think of meet clients where they are, that's the first thing that enters my mind. It's to paint it with an image. It's walking up beside them, sitting down, and just figuring out who they are, what they need, and what moment they're in when you approach them.
Well, and this can be super difficult to practice because sometimes we know exactly what the straight line would be that would get somebody quickly from the grief that they're feeling, the pain that they're feeling, the struggle that they're feeling, to relief and freedom. And we know what that line is. We've maybe experienced ourselves. Um, but we can't. We can't drive their story, right, Greg?
Right. And if you try to, and I know this from experience, unfortunately, but if you try to, you will lose them. Nothing that you have to give them, that may be over, nothing or most of what you have to give them will be received at all. I learned that by being married 25 years and raising 3 kids. It when I was younger and I got exposed to ACOA and all that as a young man, I started reading voraciously, self-help books, everything I could find. And my brain became full of knowledge. And so I would want to tell people what they need to know about their dysfunctional family, or, all that Claudia Black stuff from the 80s. Um, Not once does somebody say, oh, thank you so much. You've helped me choose a better path for my life. Not even close. So, um, I think that's a really big thing. Yeah, you see something and you think, I know the path they need to take. You may be right. And but the truth is, and this may be hard for some of you to hear, you may not be right. You'll never know until you let them choose their own path and walk with them.
Right. There's just so many variables that you can't account for and what that person's disposition is and their journey, right? One of the things that really rocked my boat in the beginning of my experience with support after abortion was hearing somebody say what they would have appreciated when they announced their pregnancy to their friends. What they said they would have appreciated is if somebody said, "How do you feel about that?"
Hmm.
Pause, quiet, rather than that, impulsive, congratulations, this is amazing. And that's the joy that we feel in our hearts, right? But when we try to put somebody in a box, when we try to tell them how they're feeling or what it means or what it might be connected to, that takes away from their experience. And so one of the things that we talk about at Support After Abortion so much is options-based healing. That means that we have this lovely options-based wheel that you can probably all call to your mind, where we, through our after abortion line, discern with clients where to drive them. Sometimes that's going to be to a one-on-one care situation, sometimes to a group setting, sometimes straight to clinical care, sometimes to peer-led care, sometimes a religious, sometimes a secular. And that journey is long, right? It's not a one and done type of experience. So when you meet somebody with options-based healing, we have to revisit that conversation all over again when they want to go to the next step in their journey. We can't assume that their first step is going to be what they need for their second step. In fact, I've been surprised sometimes when people have want to repeat a step. That can be something that we need to be open to as well, right?
Yep.
So meeting people where they're at means that we need to get out of our own way, do all of the things that we were talking about in the beginning of our first four resolutions, and just continue to expand what their journey might look like and how we might be part of it. And it's such an honor, right, to accompany people on their journeys.
It is, and it's a humbling experience. One thing that you just briefly brushed up against a minute ago, Kylie, that ties the first five all together, and I'm going to say it in this verbiage: be comfortable with the uncomfortable silence.
Mm.
Whether you're talking to somebody you're serving, one of your team members, one of your kids, be comfortable with the uncomfortable silence. Give them time to process and sort and connect with whatever's happening. We don't have to keep telling them stuff. Sometimes we feel that urgency, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose them. I got to tell them now. We don't have to. It's okay for there to be silence. The next one has a lot to do with how we all work together in this world. And number six is collaborate. Now, everybody in this meeting right now has different experiences, different healing journeys, different gifts. There are different places in life, the country, the world, their culture, whatever. How else can we help the most people in the most impactful way if we're not willing to collaborate with other groups, other organizations, other ideas? This is how we learn and grow, folks. It's probably part of the reason all of you are on my screen right now, because we're all trying to learn from one another. We will strengthen the abortion healing movement, if you want to call it that, by working together, learning from each other. There's an old thing in the 12-step recovery world: take what you like and leave the rest. I guarantee if I sat down and talked to each one of you individually um, for 10 minutes, we would both walk away with some nugget that we were like, yep, I need that. I'm going to do that. And we'd also walk away with something, nope, not doing that. Right. This is collaboration. It's working together for the common goal, which is to help as many people find healing as possible. Right.
Yeah, one of the things that really strikes me when we talk about collaboration, and this may be a difference in our genders, Greg, is that sometimes when I'm approached with collaboration, I start to think that I have to hold more. that's not what I'm being asked to do when I'm being invited to collaborate. So I think so much about the ways in which abortion intersects with other agencies. Right here in my town, we have a rape crisis center, we have domestic violence shelters, we have spaces and places for those who are experiencing addiction and homelessness, those who are in prison ministry. So many different opportunities where we could invite the conversation about abortion healing into those spaces without making it feel like they need to learn what it is to be an abortion healing provider. It's just a matter of being able to work together, network together, identify opportunities together, and then walk forward together. Right. And so sometimes that will look like, wow, this is so important. The intersection is so high. We need to have somebody on our team that is devoted to this. Other times you're going to talk to people who say, okay, I'm going to make sure that your resources are available, that people know how to find you. But we're not going to care for that part of their story right now. That may be down the road for them. And that's terrific, right? We have collaboration with miscarriage spaces where people have experienced both abortion and miscarriage. And sometimes they say, I want to start with my miscarriage loss and I want to explore that grief first. Sometimes they want to start with their abortion story and to experience that grief and healing first. It just depends on the person. So that's where we talk about meeting clients where they're at and meeting providers, meeting our peers where they're at.
And so what you're talking about, I was going to get a little deeper into on point 8. But it's totally cool. And you're 100% right. I've got guys, because of conferences I spoke at last year that weren't explicitly pro-life events, that now they specialize in healing for men that have sexual dysfunctions or pornography issues or drug addiction. And I know those people I can talk to. And that's part of collaboration. That's also part of number 8, and I'll come back to 7, but that's also part of number 8, which is keeping my lane clear and staying in my lane. And we've talked about this over and over, Kylie. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. If a guy comes to me, and it's happened before, we get through one layer of healing. Say we get through Keystone and healing, and he gets in touch with, hey, you know what? I've got a pornography addiction. Okay, I don't know personally how to help him, but I know guys who do. And so I stay in my lane, which is abortion healing and some other stuff. But and I hand that off to somebody else. And to keep in my lane clear, to me, if I get muddled down with a bunch of other different things that aren't my thing, then what I'm doing is being less impactful to the people I'm trying to serve. So it's that awareness that I know what I know and I know what I don't. And I know where I can help and I know where I need to hand it to the next guy. Right.
Yeah, and that knowing what you don't know is such a valuable contribution to your team. And so when we walk with excellence, which is one of our core values here at Support After Abortion, it doesn't mean that we have to be excellent at everything. It just means that we need to know where we can operate within our zeal and gifts and talents and stay in that space. What's so interesting, when I first started at Support After Abortion, I have a warm space in my heart for this story. I very much got out of my lane. I was the COO. But I got out of my lane. And how can that happen? I thought everything was my lane. But I got straight into one of my staff members' lanes and started fixing something that needed to be addressed. And she said, I'm I'm really ready and willing to step into this whenever you're ready to let go of it. And what a relief that was for me. And we have never once gotten into each other's lanes again. So
And that, so away from the client thing, what you just shared about the team thing, that is another key element to having a truly effective and impactful team. You collaborate, you talk, whatever, but you stay in your lane and do what you do. And we, in our operations meeting every week, somebody at least once will say, well, that's really not my lane, or that is my lane. And they're not rigid boundaries, y'all. but their understanding and the sort of awareness of where I belong and what I'm doing. Um, let's jump back up to 7 because this is really important, and I don't think we think about it consciously in the right way enough, and that is recognize and embrace individual strengths, talents, and diversity. Now, that's economic, educational diversity, racial diversity, whether you're a man or a woman. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to look at that particular word, but it's important to embrace. And apparently, Kylie did because a little over a year ago, she hired me, a guy. And, but there's some differences, right, Kylie, in how the
Lot.
team communicates with me and how I communicate. But it's important. And it's important that you respect what somebody else's strengths, talents, or whatever, what they bring to the conversation. The other thing is, and I haven't said this a lot because I don't, but I'll go ahead and say it in front of y'all. Kylie has done this amazing job of going, hey, Greg's really good at this stuff. And so we're going to give him more of that stuff. He's not really good at this stuff. And so we're not going to try to make him.
Mm.
That is effectively utilizing my strengths and talents. I'm never going to be an accountant, folks. Not my gig. Um, there's about a million things I'd rather do other than that kind of gig. But, and so when you look at your team and your volunteers and whatever, again, don't try to push somebody into somewhere they don't belong. You will thrive, and so will they, and the whole organization will, if you allow people to be what they're good at and help them develop. And there's also room for like some of the stuff I'm not good at, I'm trying to get better at, but there are things that are just I'm not talented at. There are things I'm not going to see because I'm a guy, the same way as a woman sees it. And to understand that's okay and to embrace that is a beautiful thing. Um, Ooh, we're running short on time, Kylie, and we got 2 more.
Well, I want to just add, though, that one of the ways that we've been able to do that as a team is because we really embrace assessments. Each year, we've brought a different assessment into our team to help us understand each other and our gifts and talents. One of the things that kind of plagues organizations is that when you see somebody who is really competent and really doing a great job, sometimes we just promote them to different gigs because we see some fire burning over here on the left and we're like, oh, competent person, fire burning, we'll put them together and everything will be better. But that's not necessarily honoring the person, right? To send them into that burning building when, I might be taking Greg, a competent staff member, and sending him into an accounting burning building. That would be a disaster on so many levels.
And
So
that
Greg,
building would continue to burn.
it would, but I want to go ahead and share our slide here, Greg, because I think we are at that moment that we can talk about these as kind of a whole, right?
Yep. Yep. And so we've covered the first 8, gang, and we just talk about number 9, remove obstacles to healing. That really, honestly, Kylie, kind of keys into what we've already talked about. It's one of the things, listening, right?
Right.
Begin with listening. You got to know what kind of healing people are looking for. Our study that we did on the impact of abortion on men, we found out that 40% of men, just for example, want a religious approach to healing. 77% strongly valued anonymity. So if you hang a shingle out on your church and it says men's abortion healing Tuesday nights at 8, and the guy 2 blocks away doesn't want a religious approach and wants anonymity, 2 blocks away, there's a guy that needs what you're offering, but he ain't coming. And that's just one example. And Kylie, if you want to riff on that for a minute, that's fine. But I'm trying to be mindful of time right now.
Yeah. Keep going.
All right. So then let's talk about 10. This is a big thing in the men's healing world. And let me preface by saying 15 years ago, when I entered healing abortion for myself or abortion healing for myself, I remember trying to volunteer at a pregnancy center, a few of them in my area, and they were like, well, we don't really have stuff for guys. So it is changing. And I applaud all of you that are reaching into those spaces. But we talk about numbers 10, ensure marketing, messaging, decor, processes, resources speak to all clients. And what does that mean? I can tell you a lot of pregnancy centers, if a guy walked in, he would not be comfortable in that space. Pastel colors, Women's Day magazine on the table, I don't know, lilac scented. That's a bad example. I love lilac, but scented candles burning. Yanni playing in the background on the pan flute. That's really not a guy's space. And I know a guy in Holland, Michigan, who right across the street from the pregnancy center, he's got a dude space now. So a couple comes in, the woman gets her ultrasound and goes with whoever she goes with. The guy goes over to a space where there's, um, leather masculine couches and pool tables and dartboards. And maybe you don't do all that, but your space needs to appeal um, to men and women. And if we take it a step further, if you're an upper middle class suburban woman in, I don't know, the north side of Indianapolis, you have to be mindful that your design elements in your head of what you think would be appealing and welcoming may not fit somebody that lives in the projects at 34th and Holt in Indianapolis. And I know Indianapolis, you guys are like, where? Um, so being mindful of that, being mindful of whoever comes to your space or sees your marketing or your social media post or whatever, that it speaks in the broadest way possible to encourage as many people as possible that you are a place they want to be.
Yeah. So, and it goes beyond gender, it goes beyond socioeconomics. It can also go into, how religious is your setting? If you are trying to serve secular clients, do they feel safe in that space? One of the ways that we recommend being curious about this is by getting an advisory committee together where you identify who it is that you most desire to walk into your center and hear from them, get their feedback about the experience. And we have mystery shoppers in grocery stores. We can have mystery shoppers in our clinics as well, and in our spaces that can help to give us feedback and guide us on things that might be a blind spot for us. Well, Craig,
Absolutely.
I
And
think we drove right through these top 10. But the great thing, Ivy, if you would do us a favor, we have created a little worksheet for you, and we invite you in the chat. You'll be able to download this PDF. It will have all of the 10 resolutions, and it's going to challenge you. Maybe this is something you do on your own. Maybe it's something that you invite your team into, of reflecting on, what is one way? What is one thing that we could do in 24 that would expand how we collaborate, or would ensure that my team has removed all the obstacles to accessing healing in my center. So take this initiative, take this time together that we've spent today, and bring this back and see what it is that you can challenge yourself to do. Greg, do you want to take questions?
we got a few minutes if anybody's got questions. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you, much like we did me.
Yeah, so Greg, as people are thinking about their questions, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Heartbeat. We have a lot of fun going to the Heartbeat conference each year. This year it's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. I know you're especially excited about this trip, Greg. So our team, Greg and Amanda, they are going to speak on Wednesday, April the 24th, beginning at 2:00. So this is that first day of the conference. You're going to hear your keynote, you're going to have some lunch, and you're going to go straight to listen to Greg and Amanda. And our topic is It's Built. Why aren't they coming? And we want to gather stories and talk about what we call problem solution outcome, PSO. So if you have any stories that you'd be willing to share with us, we would love to highlight your successes in this chat on the 24th. And what that looks like is sharing with us a problem, how your team has solved for that problem and what kind of outcome you might have had from that. An example is an organization that had about 100 people a year that were not being served because they did not have the option in that abortion healing space for the type of care that those 100 people needed. And so the problem was that there were these folks that were walking out without care. And the solution was to expand their care to allow for a new resource to be brought in. And the outcome was that more people were able to be served, that people did not leave empty-handed. So if you have a story to share, Ivy has posted a link in the chat, and you can let us know, and we can gather those stories together and share them with each other, because that's collaboration, right, Greg? Collaboration is using these chances to learn from each other and to be better as a whole, and lift each other up. So we do have one chat in here, Greg, that someone is looking for a little bit more of an example of what it means when we say remove obstacles to access healing.
Well, we can go in a lot of different directions with that. Um, let's talk about one of the obvious ones I see, which is um, if you only offer men's religious healing opportunities, that's an obstacle to a large group of men who need healing, right? Um, it doesn't mean, and if you're a Christian, and I know a lot of people on this call are, offering a secular healing opportunity is it we're not asking you to ignore what you believe or anything. It's not that kind of thing. It's just it goes back to one of our top 10 items, meeting clients where they're at. Um, so we put up these obstacles, only offering in person. It's really easy to offer virtual, and I'll tell you all something. 2 years ago, when I was first asked to facilitate a virtual group, I thought there's absolutely no way I'm doing this. It's not going to work. Guys aren't going to dig this. Why? Because my experience had taught me over 20 years that you meet in person and that's how healing works. Well, what I learned was that guys are actually quite a bit more comfortable sitting in their own den or garage on a Zoom call than they are sitting in a circle in some strange building. So that's another obstacle. And when we talk about options-based healing, really the more options you have, the more obstacles you remove, right? If you're in a community where there's a large Spanish-speaking community and you don't have ways to serve them, not having a way to serve that group is an obstacle. And we could go on and on down a list, Kylie. I mean, the list is really endless, and it's going to be a little different for all of us. But it's the idea of, for me, of offering as many options as possible to reach as many people as possible. And by the way, to tie that into number 5, to meet people where they're at.
Right. I think one of our internal points that we did kind of an aha moment a couple of months ago to remove obstacles to access healing is reducing our intake form. I love data. I love information. I want to be able to better know you and better understand you. But my colleague really brought to the forefront of our conversation that the longer that form is and the more that process is, the harder it is for somebody who just wants to have a release and experience healing to get to that point. So we looked at that and shortened it and made our process a little bit more simple. And what that can look like sometimes is that we ask questions down the road and don't try to get everything in today. So with that, we wanted to make sure that come to some future opportunities. Greg has launched our Men's Healing Matters webinars. They recur on the second Wednesday of each month. We already have our February webinar up for you to watch on replay if you missed it. And the next one's March 13th, right, Greg?
March 13th, and we are going to be talking about maybe changing the way we speak about abortion.
Great. And then our next abortion healing provider webinar is on March the 20th. We will send you an email, but please go ahead and save the date on your calendar for both March the 13th at noon and March the 20th at noon. We can't wait to see you there and appreciate so much your time with us today. Any closing remarks, Greg?
No, thanks everybody for being here. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can email either one of us. If you want to continue the conversation, we are available to help in any way we can.
Thank you. Have a wonderful week.